And buonasera a tutti. Good evening, y'all. And thank you first and foremost for my buddy, my guest, my fellow Seton Hall alum, and my friend of, God, 5, 6 years now. But my buddy, Michael Olson, has joined me today. Michael, how you doing, my friend? Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
I'm Will. Thank you for having me, Scoop. I'm super happy to be here.
Glad to have you on. It's always definitely an exciting time in sports. We've obviously got the baseball season that just kicked off. We've got the draft coming up, and then before you know it, football season will be back finally. I feel like I'm in football withdrawal, even though it's only been 2 months. So there's a lot to talk about, a lot of exciting things to say, and of course, everybody out there. Whether it's something that we're talking about live, whether it's something that you just have on your mind, if you've got a question or something you want to bring up, just fire it away in the comments, and we will be looking forward to interacting with y'all and seeing what's on y'all's agenda tonight. So, thanks again, Michael, and let's get into it. So, buddy, obviously, the Yankees about 2 weeks into the season now. Feels like we can't go one day or another without somebody else getting injured or somebody else looking like they're injured out on the field, depending whether that was last night with the eyesore from Marcus Stroman, who did end up ultimately going on the injured list. But I want to keep things positive right now. So from the games that you have seen, and I know that we both have seen different games throughout the season so far, but from what you have seen and going back to the offseason, what did you come into this season most excited about with the Yankees?
I came into this offseason most excited about as odd as this says, the revamped offense. And don't get me wrong, Soto was a titanic loss, but they were able to reshore that with other things, such as Bellinger, who's been a great add so far. They've gotten a bunch of guys to make up for the losses, and I've been very happy with that. Like the team is more well-rounded overall.
Couldn't agree with you more. You know as well as anybody, I think that everybody in our fantasy baseball league has tried to get Bellinger from me so far. So, no, I agree with you. He was very exciting to bring in, and the well-roundedness. I think that you put that perfectly. Soto, I'm glad that you acknowledged Soto being a big loss, because I think there's a lot of Yankees fans who, as soon as he went across town, were like, "Oh, he ain't blank. He's like all this stuff."
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, he definitely, I'm sure he's going to have a fantastic rest of his career over in Queens. But especially looking at the injuries that we've had so far, I don't know if we would have been in position to sustain some of the injuries that we've had and some of the injuries that we continue to have now with Stroman out, had we not been able to diversify that allocation elsewhere that would have been tied up with Soto this year.
I will say I give Cashman a lot of credit for what he does with pitching. Like, he's been very good at signing players who you and I both have maybe never heard of, who end up becoming quality relievers. And something I would like to see is more buying low on guys who may have injuries or maybe just ineffectiveness at a point in their career. I'd love to see something like that, maybe try to develop somebody who you see flashes of greatness with, like Ken did. I don't know if you remember Mike Soroka on the Braves.
Oh, I remember him very well.
Yeah, and then he had injury issues, ended up on the White Sox. He was somebody I wanted them to sign in free agency.
Yeah, no, that's a great point as well. He, and that's what teams like. When you look at teams like Atlanta, teams like Los Angeles, that's what they are great at. It's not just when they go out and they spend all this money, because Atlanta doesn't spend a ton of money on free agency.
Oh no.
When they won that title a few years ago, it was Alex Anthopoulos going out at the deadline, and I remember Braves fans being like, "This is all we did. We just got a bunch of around the margins reinforcements," and sometimes that's the right. Sometimes that's the right play.
Yeah, and it's looking like that Ronald Acuna contract is going to be that's going to be the gift that keeps on giving. I mean, something, I think $96 million for 8 years or something. I'm off on those numbers, but it's a very
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
No, and that's why when I come on here and I wax poetic about the Atlanta front office, that's one of the things that I love about them, and just that whole culture is you've got guys who are buying into it, who are willingly taking less than market value, and who are they're doing the New England Patriots thing under the Bill Belichick. They're taking less than market value, and they're staying for they're 8 years deal. These aren't like 2-3 year deals. These are 8-9 year deals at
Mhm.
probably 70% of their market value. But they're when was the last time Atlanta wasn't in contention? Was it like 2016, something like that? It
Yeah.
like
They had one off
they're not
year.
going to win every year, but they're going to be in it every year.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like
Actually, and you mentioned. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
it's just the consistency is amazing.
It is, and one of the guys that we talked about the how Acuna has been injured, but earlier today, game that just went final a little while ago, Michael Harris the second. I don't know if you've gotten to watch him that much, but
Mhm.
if you like defensive center fielders like I do, you got to watch Michael Harris the second. The guy he ended the game on a walk off for them, and
Mhm.
he's gonna be something for years to come.
I remember thinking he was overhyped initially when he came up, but I was wrong. He's definitely the real deal. Like
He's
defensively, he's awesome. He's like I used to love watching Harrison Bader.
that's exactly what I was just gonna. The Bader, Kiermaier, like the type of guys who they're not going to overwhelm you with the bat, even though he just had the walk off. But he's it's hard to match. I'm going to jump in with some comments here real quick that we're getting. My buddy Kenny Kirkpatrick's jumping in. He says, "Scoops, have a great show and welcome, Michael." He says, "I'm working, of course, so we'll listen later on." Kenny, I hope you have a great shift and hope you have had a good weekend so far. And thanks for jumping in. I appreciate you taking the time out of your weekend to join us tonight. He says he's excited about Bellinger and Goldie being the veteran leadership in the locker room. I think that is extremely important as well. We lost guys like Anthony Rizzo. We've lost guys over the last couple of years who, were some of that veteran leadership. And I think last year and going back to 2023, a lot of people thought that we could use more of that. He says Goldie can help Rice and Bellinger and help. I'm sorry, Goldie can help Rice and Bellinger can help Dominguez in his opinion.
Well, that's a good way
And
to look at it.
yeah, and Ben Rice, I mean, I know he had a great spring training, but talk about somebody who I think a lot of us were excited to see guys that we thought were going to be great this year. Rice is somebody who I didn't know what to expect from, but I've been very impressed with him so far.
I've been really pleased with him. I mean, he'd be a great backup catcher, great first baseman. I mean, um, like, yeah, I have to say Goldie, I think, has been a good signing. He was a great buy low candidate because if you remember, back in 2023, he was in the Triple Crown
Yep.
race up until, I want to say, end of July, early August. And last year, he didn't have a great year. That being said, it was a great opportunity for the Yankees to swoop in and buy low on him.
Yeah, it goes back to what you were talking about with buying low on some of these guys, and that's why this offseason I didn't really understand a ton of I knew that there was some people who were saying, oh, Goldschmidt's not what he once was, which obviously is the case when you've got a guy who's pushing 40, but there were so many people who were like actively against bringing in a guy like Goldschmidt, and I understand why they weren't going if they saw something like this coming from Ben Rice. I understand not wanting to lock in these long-term guys. It's like this is constant like civil war in Yankees fandom where they're like play the kids, play the kids, play the kids. But then when you do what is required to play the kids, which means not log jamming these guys with 5-6 year contracts, now all of a sudden they get frustrated on that end too. So it's like
Oh, absolutely.
To catch what you were saying about Cashman, he sometimes finds himself in a no-win situation.
Mm-hmm.
Kenny says, Michael, he was talking to you about how he saw Soroka pitching with the Nationals.
Yeah, that's really cool. He had a lot of potential early on. Hopefully, he can revitalize his career. I think he's on the Rangers now. I can't remember, but
that sounds right. Yeah, because that sounds right. The Rangers, I looked at the stand. I hadn't actually. I'll be honest with you. I hadn't checked the standings in several days until I did right before the show.
okay.
And they actually have a one win advantage on New York right now. Like they are doing very well in the AL West right now. So,
Wow.
So I was surprised to see that. But I always am reluctant to, especially in mid-April, to get too high or low on teams based on where they are in the standings this early. But they, every game counts. I mean, we saw it a few years ago. Yankees started, I think, 11-18 or something, and it ended up killing them at the end of the year. So even though it's
Oh,
early, these
2020.
games. Was it 2023? You said?
I think so. It's not a year I want to remember.
No, I don't think any New York fans want to remember 2023. But no, that was, and it just like you said, it's every game counts. So I got to commend Texas for what they've been able to do, and I'm not
Oh, yeah.
entirely surprised because they did obviously they're just 1 year removed from their title, but I while we're uh, before we get back into that, I did want to ask you when it comes to because we were going to talk about football a little bit as well. So the Giants, obviously about a month into the free agency, the Giants have made probably the biggest overhaul of a quarterback room in pre-draft free agency that I've seen a team do in recent memory. So I got to get your thoughts. You got
Okay.
Jameis Winston in there. You got Jameis Winston. You got Russell Wilson. Two guys of whom, as a football fan, I'm definitely a fan of. I think that those are two very solid additions for y'all. So what do you think? Is this taking pressure off of them to go quarterback in the first round, or is that still your approach?
So I think it's taking pressure off of them. I think that it buys them another year. Would I like a quarterback this draft? 100%. And personally, my top prospect would be Cam Ward. And he's just been a fantastic quarterback overall. I think he's going to have the most successful career of any quarterback in this draft coming up. But I think, like, they signed Winston first. And I think we knew he was either going to be a backup or a short-term starter. And I mean, he's on or he's off with this
Right.
30 interception, 30 touchdown year.
Exactly.
Like, you know what you're going to get there, but he would be a serviceable backup.
Right.
Russell Wilson, I was very happy to see them sign because after Denver, he was able to look pretty good when he was with Pittsburgh. There were some
Right.
moments that were good, there were some that weren't, but his career wasn't over, clearly. He's somebody who's got a lot of postseason experience. He won a Super Bowl right in East Rutherford here 10, 11 years ago. He was a signing I was very happy about. I did not want Aaron Rodgers at all. I was a little concerned about just
Understandable.
room, like presence. Like I thought to myself, he would also have higher annual value than other players for one reason or another, even though he had a very down year. But I'm content with it, I have to say. Russell Wilson would probably be he was probably my top choice of all the quarterbacks available. I mean, Cam Ward would be ideal for me, but I don't think that's going to happen this coming draft. He's going to go early. I think second, latest.
Yeah, there's been a lot of buzz around him at first overall, and I spoke last week about how that surprises me, especially in a draft that has Travis Hunter. The fact that he could even fall past number one is astonishing to me, but that's what happens when you get teams desperate at quarterback. Double back on the Giants. I'm going to ask you now about, sometimes, they talk about how sometimes the biggest moves in whether it's football or baseball are the moves you don't make. So with that in mind, the Giants did not move off of their head coach this offseason, did not move off of Joe Shane this offseason. Did you agree with that? And what's your take on that?
So I personally disagree. I half agreed. So Brian Dable, I don't know if he's the problem. We haven't really been able to tell yet. I don't know if he's the solution. But Joe Shane as general manager has not been the answer. I mean, he's made some very questionable decisions all in all. He allowed Saquon Barkley to walk, which might be one of the biggest mistakes of this franchise's 100-year history. And he also went all in on Daniel Jones, which is a decision that may be one of the worst in franchise history as well. And personally, if it were up to me at the moment, Daniel Jones had that grade. Was it 2022?
I think so, but I'm not 100% confident on that.
Okay, he had a great 2022 season where he made it to the second round of the playoffs. He beat the favored Vikings, and they made it against Philadelphia Eagles, which that was a rough game, but we're not going to go there. But he had a great season. Daniel Jones has a great work ethic, but personally, for $40 million a year, I would have done something else. I would have gotten a bridge quarterback like Colt McCoy, and I would have maybe just gotten to the next season and prepared to position yourself for a good quarterback, whether that meant during the draft, whether that meant in free agency. But those are my thoughts there.
I appreciate that. And it's interesting that you mentioned Colt McCoy with that because I got a buddy of mine who's another Giants fan, and I was speaking to him. speaking to him a couple of days ago, and he was talking about him looking at this year as a quote unquote tank year to try and get Arch Manning going into 2026. So I don't know if that's something that you've thought about as well, or because with different Giants fans to whom I speak, I'm hearing different preferences. So just thought I would get your take on that as well.
I haven't thought about that one that much, believe it or not. I have to say Arch Manning's got a lot of potential, and I mean, his family name and family history also plays into it as well. And I
Right.
hope to see him on the field a lot this year. I'm excited to see. He's now going to be the starter at Texas, if I remember right. Correct.
Right, because Quinn Ewers is going to be out.
Okay. Yeah, he went pro, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm very intrigued to see where he ends up. I see him as a late first round, early second round pick.
That's fair. I've seen him. I mean, I've seen this with a lot of the draft class. I've seen them with, with the exception of Cam Ward, I've seen guys all over the place. I saw something yesterday from Sports Illustrated that had him going potentially day two. Excuse
Okay.
me. Even though everybody that I can think of, with the exception of Cam Ward, I've seen such volatile projections on. Jalen Milroe, I've seen some people say is a fifth rounder. I've seen some people say is a second rounder who could even sneak up at the very end of the first. I think it's obvious why I have vested interest in watching Jalen Milroe.
Yes, you know why.
But at the same time, it's just I think it's a microcosm for just how it doesn't matter who you look at. Dylan Gabriel out of Oregon. Excuse me. I'm blanking on his name, but Shedeur Sanders. Excuse me. Shedeur Sanders was almost locked for a lot of people at the second or third overall pick, and now people are saying it could be a long day for him on that Thursday of the draft as well. So I think this is one of the harder to predict quarterback drafts in recent memory.
When I think about Shedeur Sanders, I personally am not. I'm not all in on the hype. Don't get me wrong; he's been a very exciting player in college, but I think to myself, like, of course, he goes to Colorado with his father, Deion Sanders, as the coach.
Right.
And I think to myself, like, if he weren't related to Deion Sanders, I wonder where he would be in the draft stock. Like, don't get me wrong, he may have a very, very good career and be very successful, but I think he's a little bit overrated in the draft. Personally, I think I'd put him between top 10 to 12 picks.
Yeah.
But I think he'll go before that. But I think if he weren't related to Deion Sanders, he would be a top 10 to 12 pick.
I think that's fair. I think you got the double helium, like you said, you've got the, he'll probably get overlooked is the opposite of what I'm trying to say. Overhyped, I guess. It's not the word I was looking for, but in terms of just based off of his pedigree and also just the fact that in general, in first rounds, we tend to see quarterbacks get drafted higher than most people thought that they should be because a team either gets desperate or a team is able to convince themselves that, if we don't get our guy now, we're not going to get him.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of makes me think of it's like the antithesis of, when you go back to, and obviously I know neither of us has much positive to say about that blue star down in Texas, but what guys like Jimmy Johnson say is, it's not about taking the best player available. It's taking about the guy that you want. And, I think sometimes teams get able to talk themselves into doing the opposite because of their desperation and inability to get it right at that position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like a lot of trades.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah. On draft day, some trades are strategically planned. Some are just out of impulsivity. I mean, you have some GMs and owners, and they just really want a player, and they're going to give whatever it takes to get that player. Like you look at, I think 1998, the draft when I think the Saints traded their entire picks for one player. I can't remember.
Williams.
Yes. I mean, like, that's a move that's just very, very questionable in every way. But
yeah, Ricky Williams. It wasn't even. This is what's funny to me is, it's like obviously it's insane to do that for anybody, but he wasn't even for the number one pick. He was picked 5th.
Oh my goodness.
That was even funnier to me about that.
He
It's
was
and
only there 2 or 3 years, if I remember right, I think.
Yeah, he was with the Saints for 3 years. Went to the Dolphins for 2 years, then went back to the Dolphins, and then went back to the Dolphins a third time after spending a year in Canada.
That's got to be up there with the Babe Ruth trade for one of the worst trades ever.
I will say he can credit Cleveland, because now Cleveland's got a trade that
Oh,
is pushing the Herschel Walker trade for perhaps the worst in football history.
they sure do.
Um, but I want to keep this somewhat of a positive
Sounds
conversation.
good.
But
Yep.
but but yeah, no, it's absolutely wild to me to look at some of these trades retroactively. Um, and he retired with Baltimore. I forgot to mention that part,
Okay.
but no, it's the. I mean, you even go back to the Rams trading with the then Redskins in 2012. I think it was 3 1s and a 2 is what they gave up to get RG3.
Mhm.
Obviously, they couldn't have known obviously that RG3 would just completely just lose his entire leg,
Oh, yeah.
but that was painful to watch.
Oh, I know.
The both of those guys, the early retirement with Andrew Luck. I mean, the offensive lines, unless you're somehow, I don't know how Joe Burrow managed to dodge it literally and figuratively for a while, but
Hmm.
these teams think, oh, we are desperate for a quarterback, and then forget that somebody has to actually keep them standing.
That sounds like the New York Giants. Um, I've gotten to see a bad offensive line for basically I'm going to say the last 10 to 15 years of my life. And I mean, 2013, 2014, they drafted Eric Flowers, who was just a spectacular
I,
miss.
I remember that.
And now they have Evan Neal, who's clearly not the answer either.
I
He's been a
I
disaster.
being an Alabama fan and having watched him for as long as I did, I was astonished that he busted as hard as he did for you guys.
Yeah, that was a pick I thought would be decent, I have to say. I was very disappointed. And I do think to myself in this upcoming draft, maybe offensive line is the way to go. Maybe they trade back. Maybe just stock up and draft capital. And there's the one lineman, the guy from Texas. I can't remember his name. He's somebody who I'm intrigued by.
You're talking about offensive linemen, right?
Yes, so offensive tackle.
Um, I know who you're talking about. I'm struggling to remember the name though.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can find it. Yeah, this is bothering me, so I got it right. Oh, Kelvin Banks.
Say again.
Kelvin Banks Jr.
Calvin Banks Jr. Thank you. Yeah, oh my lord. But real quick, I just want to acknowledge him. Our buddy Carson jumped in, and he's got a little emoticon that he tries to put up, and for whatever reason, it never shows up. But just wanted to acknowledge his waving and say, Carson, I hope you're doing well. For those who haven't seen him, he's part of Ticket Time. He's part of a big. He does a lot of arcade gaming on YouTube and Instagram as well. I think Carson, if you're still here, you can let me know if you're on TikTok as well. I can't quite remember because I haven't used TikTok in like a year. But no, he posted a video earlier today, and he goes to these like claw machines and like takes videos of like these different like gaming machines at arcades, and he's got he went to this one today that I see it almost every arcade I go to, and I play it almost every time. It's the one that you try and get the key in the little nodule and knock the thing down. I can never get it right, and he did it on the first try. I don't know how he did this, but you got to give him credit for that. And Carson, as long as you're here, if you are still here, just want to wish your Pistons well against the Knicks in the playoffs. I'll be rooting for Detroit aggressively to win as much as possible, especially since that my Pelicans completely flopped the second half of this season somehow. So, but anyway,
I've got one more draft question for you.
Go ahead.
And I've been thinking about Ashton Gianti. I think he's the biggest X factor in this draft.
Yes.
And I say that because he had such an amazing offensive year, one of the greatest offensive years in the past 50 years of college football.
Yes.
Being said, he plays in a conference where defense is like Madden in easy mode.
Right.
I mean, like, I wonder to myself, how legitimate is it? Like, I think to myself, if he's against, let's say, a defense like, who's a team with an awful, awful defense?
Um, I'm short circuiting. Las Vegas.
Okay, let's say he goes against the Las Vegas defense. I think he'll have a field day. But
Yeah.
imagine if he's against, let's say, the Dallas Cowboys defense, or yeah, that's the big, or the Eagles defense. I mean, how would he do then? That's a question I wonder. Something I pose to you. I don't know.
No, first of all, Nick, I think that that's a very fair question and something I've seen a good number of people ask. What I do know is that and what they're trying to do more, and I look at places like Pro Football Focus, who are known for kind of this advanced metric type of approach to evaluating some of these prospects, and looking at somebody like Giant. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'll be very honest with you.
GNT.
Sorry.
GNT.
GNT, thank you. They have his top ratings at balance, at mentality, at breaking tackles. They've compared him to Alvin Kamara, but they look at this. It's different for every position, but they look at the collection of this thing called stable metrics, which is basically what they can analyze in college that most is predictive of success or lack of success in the NFL. And for running backs, it's missed tackles forced per attempt, it's yards after contact per attempt, it's grade in the gap, grade in zone, and it's missed tackles forced per reception. So they used those five, and he graded in the 89th percentile of all of them, or 89th percentile or better in all of them, and he graded in the 97th percentile or better in 4 of the 5, except for performance in the gap. So, at least from those vantage points, from what I've seen, he does to me look like somebody who I think it's realistic to believe he can. I won't say replicate that success, but to translate his success to the NFL game. But I'll say this, and I said it last year when people kept telling me, or not telling me per se, but people kept saying, "Oh, I can't believe the Giants," or Saquon would have done this with the Giants, or Saquon would have done this with the Giants. And I'm not trying to harp on the Saquon thing right now, but I'm just saying, if people think, and I know you don't think this, so I'm not, I'm in, so I'm not saying this against you, but if people think that Saquon would have replicated the performance or anything close to it that he had in Philly with the Giants' offensive line, then I think whatever they had for breakfast shouldn't be legal in this country, because I don't. It's becoming more and more known how important it is for offensive line and how much that is a factor in your ability to get the running game going. So I think it's going to be critical for him to get to a team that's got a strong run blocking line.
I agree. I mean, you can see. I always thought to myself, imagine what he could do with an offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
And then this year we were finally able to see that.
Yeah, I think that. So that would be my very long-winded answer to your question. Is I think that it can translate, but I think that it's going to be heavily tied to what team he goes to, and particularly their ability to have success in the trenches in the run game. Because if he's out there, with less than half of a second to do anything before, there's already a guy who's beaten his gap, then I think that he's gonna struggle to get anything going. It's gonna, I think, be somewhat similar to some of the problems that Bijan Robinson has had in Atlanta.
Okay, that's a very valid comparison.
We've got somebody on YouTube jumping in saying, "Go Bulls." I will say one of my favorite players in the NBA does play for Chicago. I'm a huge Lonzo fan, so to that vantage point, I will say I respect at least a couple players on the Bulls. I don't have a strong rooting interest for or against them, but between that and watching The Last Dance, I do at least have respect for the organization. He says, "Rumor is my Bears are interested in him, but don't know if he'd fall down to the 10 spot." I'm going to guess that was
TNT.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah.
I do know that they were looking aggressively at trying to upgrade in the backfield in this draft. So GNC would seem to be a logical fit. And I know that they've improved their offensive line from where it was a couple years ago. Actually, our friend Maria, I think, is a Bears fan, if I remember correctly.
I think that if they traded up, I think he'll easily be there at 5. Might even be there at 7 or 8. 10, I don't know. Possible. I'd give it 50-50 chance.
I'm gonna look at the draft order real quick because I'll
Okay.
be honest. I offhand, once you get past like the 5th pick, I'm struggling to. So, all right.
Yeah.
So in that range, we've got the Jaguars at 5. We've got the Raiders at 6, the Jets at 7, Panthers at 8, and then the Saints at 9. So I don't know. I don't really look at any of those teams and think that they are in a position where they would prioritize running back, or they should prioritize running back with one of those selections, because the Bears at least believe they have their quarterback of the future. And I know that the Panthers believe the same thing, but you look at the Raiders, we don't know what they're going to be at quarterback. We look at the Jets, they're starting Justin Fields, who I like, but I don't think they see him as the long-term guy. And then the Saints just realized they were going to lose Derek Carr for likely the entire season. So I don't really see any of those teams potentially being a major threat to draft him unless they trade out with another team.
Okay. Yeah, I think some of those teams could use a running back. The Saints do not need a running back, and I think as of today, they're going to be going for a quarterback. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they get Jackson Dart or somebody.
I think that's a good idea.
I mean, they may overpay, and they may draft somebody who could have gone lower just because they're desperate for a quarterback. And I look at the Raiders, and a quarterback is very likely there, very possible. That being said, Geno Smith had a solid year last year. The year before, I think, did he win Comeback Player of the Year? I mean,
I think you might. And he's got help me out. He's got Pete Carroll there now, who was the coach in Seattle.
yeah. Like, I remember thinking at a time, I thought to myself, like, would they get a like, I thought to myself when Pete Carroll was hired, are they going to get a quarterback with ties to him already? And that's what they ended up doing. And Geno Smith is a solid quarterback. It makes me wonder, they could use a quarterback, but it may not be of the utmost urgency at the moment.
That's fair. And when they brought him in, I think a lot of people made the connection of potentially bringing Russ over there because of, again, they've got the ties with Carroll and wherever he was going to go. But Geno Smith, for the first time really since he was drafted in 2013, the last couple of years has looked like, okay, this is maybe the quarterback that they thought they were getting when New York took him in the 2nd round. Maybe there's at least some form of that still in there to some degree. I don't think a lot of people expected that it would bloom in year 8 or 9, but I guess it just goes to show that, persistence can pay off.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. I just want to apologize real quick to anybody who was in the comments. We were dealing with what appears to be a spammer, so I just want to apologize to anybody who saw that. Hopefully the issue has been dealt with. So apologies there. I'm going to jump back in with you, Michael. I want to get back to the Yankees real quick because I know that we're about 14 or so games into the season.
Yep.
But as we saw once again today, we mentioned the Stroman injury. I asked you what was your most exciting element about the team coming into this year. What in the first 10th or so of the season have you seen that you think, oh, this is probably an area where we could look to upgrade?
2 words: starting pitching. And I would say that because, of course, there have been injury issues. I mean, Garrett Cole is down, Clark Schmidt is down, Marcus Stroman is down, and Max Fried has stepped up. He's looked good. Will Barn has stepped up. He's looked decent at times.
He looked good today.
Yeah, he looked very good today. I mean, I think to myself, like, fasting backwards to this past offseason, everybody was like, trade Stroman. I thought they should have traded Stroman because they had other needs that they could have addressed with their surplus of starting pitching.
I think
It
we
was
were
a
in lockstep on that one.
it was a good thing that they didn't, because he was needed as the season started,
Pretty quickly.
and now he's down. So I question what's going to happen now. I wonder if they should sign somebody off free agency. But yeah, I have to say Max Fried I'm very pleased with. Rodon I've been pleased with. I mean, he's had one start that wasn't too great if I remember right, but
Yeah.
I have to say I'm pleased with the pitchers they have. They just
Yeah.
need to get together moving forward.
I think that's a great way to put it. And also, I just want to mention real quick, Schmidt is going to be back this week.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, it just came out like right before we went live. They're expecting to activate him for the next series. So
good.
There's a very welcome piece of news in the infestation of the injury bug that the Yankees have been dealing with for the past couple of weeks. But and it's because you talk about the Stroman and the decision not to trade him, which anybody who watched the show this offseason knows that I was very much in favor of doing so. And I am very grateful that obviously they didn't do that. So, I mentioned earlier, sometimes some of the best moves are the moves that you don't make. And that appears to have been the case with Stroman, even though he obviously was hard to watch yesterday. But I honestly don't get why that game. Did you get to watch the game yesterday?
I did not. I think I had school assignment due, actually.
Understandable. No, I mean, I didn't get much of it, but the game, so it had been raining cats and dogs since like first pitch. And both pitchers, by the time before the second inning was over, both pitchers had combined to walk 6 guys. So clearly they were struggling to get quite literally struggling to get a grip on the ball. So the fact that they let the game go 6 innings, and Stroman was getting trashed in social media. That was one game that I am not going to knock Stroman for, when it's clear that, again, neither pitcher was able to. I mean, Robbie Ray was starting for San Francisco, and I literally took Robbie Ray out of my lineup in a fantasy matchup because I was just like, I don't like anything about what's going to be happening here.
Yeah.
This guy, Random Ryan, the guy that was talking about the Bulls, he jumped in and says, as a White Sox fan, I don't like baseball anymore. I don't think any of us can blame you. I don't think any of us can blame you, man. They got to get Ozzie Guillen from the booth up there, and they got to bring him back down into the dugout. I still wish Ozzie had gotten this another chance after Miami let him go.
I will say, don't look now, but they're going for the sweep tomorrow, the Red Sox. That would be awesome to see as a Yankee fan.
They are? Oh, wow. I didn't even – yeah, I knew that they had won yesterday. I didn't get a chance to see what they had done today.
Yeah, they won again. Walk-off off Aroldis Chapman. So that's 2 thumbs up over here.
Oh, God, bro, people could say whatever they want about it. We've seen a lot of players that have been hard to watch in our time watching New York. We've sat through Chris Carter. We've sat through Joey Gallo. We've sat through, you can name any number of pitchers. I don't know if any pitcher has upset me more on our own team as a Yankees fan than Aroldis Chapman.
Nothing's worse than the smile as he gave up the go-ahead home run.
That's what made me so bad. 2 different times in the playoffs, he gives up the deciding homer, and he's just sitting there, and I'm just like, and then when he signed with Boston, I'm just like, he was working as a double agent the whole time. It's the only one that's the only way that makes any sense.
The thing that got me is when you see him celebrating when he won the championship with the Rangers in 2023.
I don't remember seeing that, to be honest with you.
Oh, okay. I do. But he got 2 World Series championships, one with the Cubs 2016, one with the Rangers in 2023. Yeah. And there's a big tenure in the middle of that with the Yankees. No comment.
No. 2016, and people look back and say, oh, the Cubs obviously won that trade because Chapman helped them win the World Series. I think that Gleyber Torres got more heat from Yankees fans than he deserved, even though what I heard about him last year with, I'm not willing to play third base, so this is why they brought in Chisholm, who had never played third base in his life. But, man, Chapman has, like I said, that has got to be collectively the most frustrating player that I've seen as a Yankees fan on the Yankees.
I got to see him this summer. I went to Pittsburgh, PNC Park, which is an
Oh,
amazing
when he was playing for the Pirates, yeah.
and I got to see him run out. He was the setup man. And I just remember I looked over at my family members. I'm just like, but
Setup man. Oh, was
yeah,
Bednar the closer at the time?
yeah, he's not doing too hot right now either.
They
But
removed him from the closer role, I think.
I think so. They might have even optioned him to the minors a week or two ago, if I
You know what?
remember.
I think you're right. I think you're right now that I remember because I knew that they had demoted him in some capacity because I remember because going back to this is the most times I've mentioned fantasy baseball in one episode, but I had to take him off one of my rosters because he was doing so bad.
Um,
But no, I mean Chapman, and I will say the fact that he is still able to throw like 103, 104 at his age, 15 years past his prime is, I will say, that is obviously very impressive, particularly because
mhm.
like he was the one doing it, like, not to use the cliche phrase, but he was doing it before it was cool. And like he was, he was the guy for that. And I was watching, I can't for the life of me remember who it was. I don't think it was Mark DeRosa. It might have been Greg Amsinger. It was somebody on MLB Network. And they were talking about Hall of Famers from a bullpen perspective, like future Hall of Famers from a bullpen perspective from this generation. And they mentioned two names. They mentioned him and they mentioned Kenley Jansen,
Okay.
which I think whole body of work, like I can see I mean, obviously, I mean, there's like the huge elephant in the room about whatever Hall of Fame case he would have based on what happened in 2016 or 2015 rather. But
Hmm.
I
Oh
don't know.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's
Um, yeah. The other name I'd add to that is Craig Kimbrell.
Yeah, I was surprised that he didn't come up. The only thing I could come up with was maybe because of the length of time. I think he had a shorter prime maybe than some of the others did, and
Yeah.
that's the only thing I could come up with.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't know. It's so hard because when you think of like for me, and I'm guilty of this, when I think of Hall of Fame relief pitching, I think of two guys in particular. I think of Mariano Rivera and I think of Goose Gossage.
Yeah.
And now you
I
can
think
add
Needham is good.
Billy Wagner to that. So like because of those guys like being the standard, it's like how far, because I'm a small Hall guy. I don't know about you. I'm a small Hall guy. I'd rather see fewer Hall of Famers than more.
Me
So
too.
so if I'm looking at these guys, it's like where's the threshold? Because there's already so few relievers to begin with.
Oh
So
yeah.
like where's the cutoff there?
Yep. That's a very good question. I think to myself a minimum of 400 saves. Like when I think
That's
about the
fair.
Hall of Fame, I like to see minimum criteria, like 3,000 hits, 500 home runs, 400 saves, um, 300 wins. I would say 20 years ago. Now I would say 250 is the new 300. Eventually, that's going to go down to 200 wins in another 10,
Right.
20 years. And yeah, I mean, like you look at past 20 years since Randy Johnson became the final member of the 300 win club. I think the player with the most wins, I want to say, is Justin Verlander. I think he's at like 262.
Oh, okay. I would have thought it was CC, but okay.
Yeah, he was at 250-ish, if I remember
Okay.
right.
Okay, that makes sense.
Also, yeah. Also, Mike Messina had, I think, 266, maybe.
I'm
But
not gonna lie, I stopped paying attention to wins years ago, so you would know better than I
yeah,
would. You would
but
know
yeah.
better.
Um, but I think to myself, like, there should be minimum criteria. Like, that would be me as a voter. Like, I would
That's
vote
fair.
Ichiro in any day. I would vote Adrian
Did they
Beltre.
ever announce who was the one guy who didn't vote for Ichiro?
They did not, but he's got to
I
live with the pain.
God, I
So
wonder why. God, I wonder why. Um,
yeah,
but that makes sense. The other thing that I wonder is instead of having it be the BBWAA or the Veterans Committee, my thought was have the current Hall of Famers be the ones who vote in the Hall of Fame classes.
oh, I think that would be great. Like, I personally think to myself a compromise, like where it's a mix of BBWAA and
Hmm.
also like players. I
Yeah,
think that would be the best thing for the sport ever.
Hmm.
The players are going to have an first person understanding that the writers are not.
Yeah, and
Like,
it's
I think um, who's somebody you may see a big difference in opinion with baseball writers and the players. Like, I think somebody like a Larry Walker, Scott Rowland.
the first guy that I thought of was Barry Bonds.
Okay, yeah, I'm very anti steroids.
I'm very very anti steroids too. However, what I will say, and I'm saying this as somebody who for a while was very against the concept of Bonds Clemens in the Hall of Fame.
Okay,
This happening in the 1998 to 2001. They had just come off the strike in 94 to 95.
yep.
Baseball hitting its stride during that period of time, excuse me, with guys like, and then you can even add in the next level of guys, the guys who, like, because there's the guys like the Clemens and the Bonds who we think would have been Hall of Famers regardless. And then there's the guys who are more iffy, which are guys like McGuire and Sosa.
Mm-hmm.
But baseball was able to see some of its best financial success because of what was going on. It
Mm-hmm.
was somewhat of an open secret during that period of time. So baseball was fine to capitalize on it when it was happening during that period. It was fine to be sort of fueled along and have its blood sort of resurged during that period of time with some of what was going on. And now baseball's going to turn around and say, okay, I get it for play because testing was re revamped in 2003, I think it was, and then I think it was 2006 when they started suspending, and then HGH was cracked down on in the early 2010s. So I get it if it's guys past those years
Okay.
who are being suspended and one thing or another. To me, I look at those guys differently. Like A-Rod, I'm not voting for, but
Oh yeah.
if it's guys who baseball was looking at and basically having some of their bet like and actively marketing these guys, and now all of a sudden 15 20 years later, it's not like they have new information now that they didn't have then. Now 15 20 years later we're saying, oh, I'm not going to acknowledge this. Like I don't know, there's something weird to me about that.
No, absolutely. I can understand that. I will say that's just something I've always took a hard line against. Like I've
Very
always thought to
understandably.
myself, yeah.
Very understandably. And the one thing I don't like is when people say, there was a past or like we know that there's already been hello. We know that there's already been guys in the Hall of Fame who have either done steroids or who have this, that, or the other. I'm like, okay, well, past mistakes don't mean you have to color the future with those same mistakes.
100% true. I can't remember what was the situation with David Ortiz. I remember there was something.
David Ortiz, I'm pretty sure that was a Mitchell Report situation.
Okay.
Where it was leaked that he was going to be, or no, it was leaked that he was going to, or that he had tested positive for something. All I know is that it was a test that was never supposed to be publicized. So if the test was never
Okay.
supposed to be, if it was a test that was never supposed to be publicized, and you know me, I'm not a big Poppy fan, but if it's a test that was not supposed to be publicized, then it's like, I struggle with that. It's kind of it,
No,
it,
a
it
lot of ethics.
it's touchy. It's
It's a very complex ethical situation as well.
exactly,
Like I
and
think if you ever took college ethics, which I'm sure you've had to take that at many points in your
ethics
education.
was one of my minors.
Oh wow, okay, you learn something new every day. But yeah, but it's just a very complex ethical situation. You also question the authenticity as well when it's
Right,
not
and
based.
it's if you find out that wasn't supposed to be public, okay, why wasn't it supposed to be publicized? Because they go out of their way to publicly announce every suspension that we've had. I
Yes.
mean, they just did it with Urickson Profar like 2 weeks ago. They go out of
Yeah.
their way to publicize every. So why did they not want it out?
Like I will say, if I were a writer and a balloter and I had a ballot, I would have voted David Ortiz
So
because
I look at him similar to how I look at Andy Pettit. For one thing, Andy Pettit, he not only did he admit what he did, but it was HGH. HGH
yep.
was not being tested for and accounted for during that period of time.
Mm-hmm. He also, I think, he got started with it actually following an injury, if I remember right.
Right. Well, and that's why
I mean, still, that doesn't make a difference, but
yeah. Well, and that's why they didn't crack down on it until again, I sometime in the early 2010s. So like if you're not testing for it, if you're not punishing for it, if you're not screening for it, but now all of a sudden 15 years later it's going to hurt your ability to get recognized. Like, and again, Barry Bonds, by any account that I've heard and that I've read, Barry Bonds was not a good teammate, was not a fun person to be around, was not a
Mhm.
fun person to interview. Barry Bonds' biggest fan was Barry Bonds by any account that I've heard and read, and I've read a lot of baseball history. That being said, do those things in my mind delegitimize the fact that everybody from Chipper Jones to pretty much all the great pitchers of the 1990s say there was not a tougher out in baseball than this guy? Like,
Mhm.
I don't know. It's tough. And
No, I
uh,
agree.
actually,
It's
since we're talking about this, I'll kick over to another one. May he rest in peace. But um, Pete Rose. Oh, actually, funny. Wow, that timing couldn't have been better because I'm assuming this is one of your relatives, but
yeah, that's my mom.
Mary Olson just asked, why isn't Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame? First of all, I just want to say, Miss Olson, I hope you're having a wonderful evening, and thank you for joining us tonight.
So I'm very surprised to see that my mom typed in a question. He Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame, and the fact that sports betting is so legal now, as
Right.
compared to many years ago, it's comparable to Reggie Bush when he got his Heisman back. I think 17, 18 years later.
That's a great comp.
And like, it's one thing to look down at something and have a hard line then. It's another thing to change it and not go back and right your mistakes.
Right.
Like, Pete Rose should be a Hall of Famer. I mean, the lifetime ban was mutually agreed with between him and the commissioner at the time.
Yep.
He bet on baseball, which is not good, but he bet on himself. He bet on his own team to win.
Right.
That's different than throwing away
That
games
makes a
like the
difference.
1919 Chicago White Sox.
Right.
I mean, on another note, you look at Shoeless Joe Jackson, who should be in the Hall of Fame because he was never implicated. He was never directly implicated. He was accused and banned, but he hit something like 419 in the World Series that year. He was one of the few guys on the team that hit well during their loss to the Reds in 1919.
Yeah, kind of hard to hit over 400 if you're trying to throw a series.
Oh, yeah. I don't think I could hit over 400 in a 7-game series with trying.
Don't look at me. I hit like 100 in 12 you.
But yeah. But I mean,
But
Pete Rose should easily be in the Hall of Fame. I hope that gets changed down the road. I mean, I think about players who are not in the Hall of Fame right now. Like, I think who are players who they should be in the Hall of Fame. And, oh, that's my dad. Anyway.
That's actually Mike's dad. Bob knows nothing about.
But, like, I think to myself, who are players where, like, you look back in baseball history and you think they should be in the Hall of Fame who are not. For a long time, I was thinking Gil Hodges, Tony Oliva. Now I think of guys like Roger Maris, who's a very debatable case because the longevity is not there, but the contribution to baseball is there.
I mean, you know my controversial Roger Maris take.
No, I don't.
I don't understand why his number 9 is retired.
And it was a historic season, but I mean, like, you look at guys.
Yeah, one season though.
Oh no, I can understand that, but I mean, you look at just players like that. Another guy, look up Harvey Kuhn later after the show.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah,
he should be in the Hall of Fame. I think he should have gotten in probably 8th, 9th, 10th ballot. I think it's a travesty that he's not in the Hall of Fame. But yeah, like, I always think to myself, like, there are some players who are in the Hall of very good, not the Hall of Fame. Some who should be in the Hall of Fame. Another one, Lou Whitaker, longtime second baseman on the Detroit Tigers.
Detroit Tiger, yep.
I mean, I think he fell off first ballot, but I disagree with that. I mean, should he have gotten in first ballot? No. I think he should have gotten in between ballots 7 to 10. I mean, very good player. Probably one of the best. Him and Jeff Kent are the two good second basemen who I think are not in the Hall of Fame. They got to be two of the top. And Robinson Cano, but that's another story.
I mean, you want to talk PEDs? I mean, that was just. I mean,
Ugh.
what a sad situation there. I mean, that guy was on a surefire Hall of Fame trajectory until he. And here's a sentence you never hear much: chased the money and left the Yankees.
Yep. I remember being devastated, but honestly,
I remember
yeah.
I remember exactly where I was when I found out. I remember texting because I worked with an aide in school, and I remember texting my aide like I was in the and I was so mad. And then when he did his interview and he was like, I didn't get any respect from the Yankees, I was like, okay, I know you got 240 from Seattle, but you were offered almost 200 from New York. So I don't know what kind of respect you're looking for, but it doesn't feel too disrespectful to me if they're offering you almost 200 million, bro.
It's kind of comparable to Juan Soto, and I say that because he wanted to be a superstar in a team. He was always the number 2 man to Derek Jeter, and I mean, if he had waited a year or two and Jeter retired, I mean, he could have been a star player like on the team. I mean,
Probably
also
would have been because they couldn't develop nobody at the end of Jeter's career.
oh no, and I mean also Judge came around a little bit later,
Yeah,
but
that was
2016.
4 years later, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Yankees, the 2013, 2014 seasons, and there's some guys who, some names that you just have to think to yourself back. You're like, who?
I'll never understand how those two teams combined to win 169 games.
Yep.
Or 169 games.
Tells you a lot about Joe Girardi. But
Yeah, I had much respect for him. I still do.
Me too. I was devastated when they fired him, and I said it was a mistake. And I
was on the opposite. I was sad they fired him, but I thought it was necessary. I wanted Raul Ibanez.
Okay.
But when it came down to Bam Bam Newlands or Aaron Boone, I was happy with the Boone hiring. I wanted, like I said, I wanted Ibanez. I did like the idea of Carlos Beltran at the time because that was before we knew he was who he is.
Yep.
But actually, and just to double back real quick, you mentioned the thresholds for the Hall of Fame. So I took a second real quick to look at the 400 save, like who that would entail, and that's
It's like 8-9 guys if I remember right.
it's 8 guys. It's Mariano Rivera, Trevor Hoffman, Lee Smith, Kenley Jansen, Craig Kimbrell, K-Rod, who I always forget about, John Franco, and Billy Wagner. And then just barely missing that is Dennis Eckersley.
K-Rod was at, what was it, 420 something?
437.
Okay.
I always forget that. Like I know he was good when, like I remember him being good when I first really got into baseball, but I forget that he was already like a 5-time All-Star before he got to Milwaukee, and I remember him as a Milwaukee Brewer. I always forget that he was like a 5-time All-Star before he even got there because of his time with the Mets and the Angels.
I remember him as a Met and an Angel. For the
Okay,
most
so you've been watching baseball for longer than I have.
So I remember when he became a Met, I just remember the Star Ledger, the big newspaper in New Jersey. They had so many articles about him, just a star player coming to the New York Mets. And this is when the Mets were down in the dumps. Like they were usually consistently the 4th place team because the Nationals existed. And but yeah, that's what I remember.
Actually, since we're talking about relief pitching, it's not to end the episode on a bit of a downbeat, but I did want to mention and respect what happened earlier this week. For those who didn't hear, there was a tragic incident in the Dominican Republic where there was a roof that caved in, and unfortunately, multiple people lost their lives. One of whom was the sister of longtime baseball star Nelson Cruz, and one of whom was one of the greatest relief pitchers I've ever seen, which was Octavio Dotel. Dotel was a relief pitcher for the 2011 champion Cardinals, but I remember him most for being part of the Detroit Tiger bullpen that snuffed out the Yankees in the 4-0 ALCS sweep in 2012. And I went and I did some digging on Dotel, and this became a stat that I had never known about, but had immense respect for. He has a better ERA in relief appearances of more than save opportunities of more than 3 outs than any pitcher in history. He was the best pitcher in those situations. So if you needed a relief pitcher in a big situation to go out and get in there more than 3 outs, you were not going to get a better pitcher than Octavio Dotel. And obviously I mean, we were all. I mean, I remember our group chat. We were all stunned when that came down. Originally, it was reported that he was rescued alive, and then we found out what happened later on. But just rest in peace to Nelly Cruz, to Octavio Dotel, and to the others who whose names are still being released. Just
Absolutely.
was a horrific day in sports and just in culture in general. So just wanted to acknowledge that on this episode as well. So thanks for giving me the chance to just bring that up real quick. But just one of them, probably the most underrated reliever that I can think of from that period of time. And I mean, the guy pitched for a record number of teams. The guy played for more teams than any other pitcher in modern baseball, which is, people say, the best players are the ones that can get, one team and stay with it. But let me tell you, if that many teams want your services over that period of time, you're doing something right. And with that, we have just ticked past the 1 hour buzzer. Thank you, everybody who jumped on tonight. We had a lot of people coming back. We had Kenny and Carson and everybody. We also had some new faces. We had Mr. Olson. Thank you for jumping in. We had Random Ryan. Thank you for jumping in. And everybody else who tuned in to view tonight. Michael, I can't thank you enough, bro. We had a lot of fun tonight. This was an awesome episode. I had a very enjoyable time doing this. We're going to have you back on very soon. But I'll let you give your closing thoughts before we sign off here real quick.
Thank you very much for having me. This was a really great experience. I hope to do this again down the road. I have to say, this was a very also a good time of year to come on. I mean, baseball season's just starting. We're gearing up for the NFL draft. I mean, Absolutely. It's a busy time in sports right now, and I'm happy to be here for it.
Absolutely. We're going to hopefully see a continuation of what's been a pretty good start to the season for the Yankees. I do wish your Giants genuinely a solid draft, and I hope that this is a great season ahead for the rivalry. And you definitely will be back on here before too long, and I'm very much looking forward to that. So thanks again, buddy.
Thank you.
All right, guys. And as I always say, next Saturday, April 19th, we'll be back 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. Same Scoop time, same Scoop channel. Scoop and my buddy Michael Olson out.